to the January or February session of Global Heart Hub's Advocacy Development Program for patient organizations. My name is Neil Johnson, and let me just move my slides here. Why am I? Okay, I hope you can. I'm just wondering, are my slides moving there? I'd like to welcome you all. We have a large registration for today's event, and accordingly we're using the webinar format, and I would encourage you to engage with our speaker through the Q&A function. The chat function is disabled, so you use the Q&A function and post your questions there. I want to acknowledge the support of our sponsors, Novartis, Vifor Pharma, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Servier. They're supporters of this series, and without their support, of course, we would not be able to deliver this program. Just by way of introduction, most of you are aware of who we are, the Global Heart Hub, a relatively new organization, an international alliance of heart patient organizations, providing a platform to unite heart patient organizations across the world, organizing and amplifying the patient and carer voice as true stakeholders in healthcare systems and, of course, in personal healthcare, building patient organization capacity for advocacy, which, of course, today's event is about, and contributing to improve self-care and self-management through empowerment. We're delighted today to have as our keynote speaker, Krista Nair, a world-class leader in social media and digital marketing. She's a pioneer of digital communications, having created some of the earliest social media marketing before social media was even a recognized term. Krista is an international keynote speaker, best-selling author, founder and CEO of her own company, Bootcamp Digital. With over 20 years experience, Krista has helped leading companies all over the world discover how to harness the power of digital marketing and social media by increasing their digital capabilities. And she has worked with well-known companies such as Google, Facebook, Nike, and the US Senate. So it's an absolute privilege to have her with us today. Just in terms of some meeting guidelines, the webinar allows a view-only option for attendees, and we encourage audience interaction through the Q&A platform. So if you have comments or wish to ask questions, please type them in there. And Krista will leave some time at the end of the session to respond to those questions and queries and comments. And to help us improve further events, we value your thoughts and feedback. And after this webinar, you will receive a survey questionnaire, short survey questionnaire, and we really ask you to fill that in and return it because it helps inform us in terms of content and future developments. I just say to you finally that the views and comments expressed by anybody during this recording are personal opinions and do not necessarily represent the views of the Global Heart Hub. And finally, before I introduce you to Krista, can I ask you to save the date for the next session, which will take place on the 13th of April. And we have guest speaker David Bronkart, who's a leading advocate in patient engagement, and he'll be speaking on the patient-clinician partnerships, Let Patients Help. So that's a future date. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Krista. Krista, you are very welcome. And thank you for joining us today.
Excellent. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and having me. I'm really excited to talk to you about how you can use digital as a strategic communication channel. As we know, digital is only growing in importance. So the more we're able to use it as a tool to communicate, the more effective we can be. Where we really see the power in digital and social media is in connecting people like never before. One of the things that we've seen is that digital is an efficient and effective way to reach people. So if you think of traditional marketing, it's the people with the biggest budgets that were the winner. When we think about digital marketing, it's the people with the smartest brains that are the winners. And that's what really makes it unique, especially for organizations like yours. So what I'm excited to share with you today are some ideas to get you started thinking about how digital and social can play a role for you and give you some pro tips to maximize your effectiveness there. Obviously, this is a huge topic. I wrote an entire super long book about it, and I'll cover all of it alphabetically today. No, just kidding, right? We're not going to cover all of this today. So what I did prepare for you, though, are some sort of pro tips and ideas of things that you can do to get started in the right direction and start seeing traction, because that's really what's important, is to get started and to use enough best practices that you're likely to see results. So I realize you all may be in different parts of your journey with this. Some of you may have no social presence at all. Some of you may be doing a few things, but not sure it's working. And some of you may be kind of operating like well-oiled machines already. Regardless of where you are, I've included some tips that will help you to get to that next level. So I'm excited to share these with you today. So let me share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so you've already heard all about me. As you can already tell, hopefully, I'm super passionate about digital marketing and how it can help businesses grow. And I discovered this back in the earliest days of digital marketing when I was running marketing for a startup. And what I discovered was that with a small budget, I was able to get better results than people who were spending 100 times more than me. And that was by using social media strategically. So I'm excited to share some of the ideas with you as well. My company, Bootcamp Digital, as you already heard, specializes in training. So I get to basically do this all day long, help other people figure this stuff out. So let's dive in. Why should you be thinking about digital? Well, the first and most important thing is that digital is growing fast. So digital is growing tremendously quickly. And we sometimes hear these narratives about certain channels being less important, et cetera. But actually, digital makes up most of our view time, et cetera. And it's only continuing to get more important. So if you're thinking, well, maybe I can ignore this, the truth is it's only getting more important. 1 in 5 minutes is actually spent on Facebook. So 1 in 5 minutes online, I should probably say online, not like in life, right? 1 in 5 minutes online is spent on Facebook. We often hear this narrative that Facebook is becoming less important, everyone's leaving Facebook, et cetera. But if you look at Facebook's annual and quarterly reports, which I do, what you'll see is Facebook continues to grow users and time on site continues to grow. So these are big, valid channels in terms of being able to connect with audiences. When we think about email, people check email every 37 minutes. Every 37 minutes. Some of us more, right? Through these bad boys, our phone. We're always on our phones. So people are checking email constantly, which means if you have a message that you want to get in front of them, this is still a valid way to do it. It's interesting because when I read about communication channels and recommendations from experts, a lot of people who are social media advocates will say things like email is dead. And frankly, there's no facts to support that. Social media is a great way to reach people, but so is email, right? It's not one or the other necessarily. So email continues to be really big. Instagram also has over 1 billion users. So just the size and scope, even of Instagram, is huge and continues to grow. People are checking their phones 96 times a day. So first of all, productivity is another topic I love to talk about. Like, how on earth are we productive when we're checking our phones all that time? But that aside, the good news for you of our phone addictions is that you can connect with people through digital channels and reach them where they're already spending times in an effective way. The nice thing about digital as well is it's not a budget game. So you don't necessarily need big money, you just need big, good messages. Over 50% of marketing dollars are now going toward digital. Now, I know many of you probably aren't operating with huge budgets, but the reason that this is important to keep in mind is because what this shows you is that the big guys with all the money, what are they betting on? They're all betting on digital because they know that's where people are. And specifically during the pandemic, time on digital has been skyrocketing. So as the marketing dollars shift towards digital, it's because that's where the eyeballs are. And that's why it's such a big opportunity for you to connect with your audiences there. So, as we look specifically at healthcare, why is it such a relevant channel for you to use? Well, people are basically online for 4 reasons. They're online for connection, so they want to connect with other people. They're online for information, they want to learn something. They're online for entertainment. And I'm going to show you some ideas of entertainment that might make you think differently about what this means. And they're also there to buy things, especially now. So maybe buying things is the one of these 4 categories that doesn't really fit in terms of some of your objectives. But what we can see is that when we reach people with the right messages, we really can do these things. From a healthcare perspective, we know that 83% of adults look online for health information. And so this is the go-to place. There's a funny joke in internet marketing circles. You guys may or may not get this joke, depending on how much you know. But somebody said the joke is basically when you have symptoms and you go online to figure out what it is, it's not telling you what you most likely have. It's telling you the disease that's best optimized for search engines. So a little bit of SEO humor if you get that. But the idea here is that when I'm going and looking at, what could this, that, and the other mean, what I'm seeing is the people who've done the most work to optimize their content, their presence, et cetera, to be seen by me, not necessarily the actual best answer. So as we know, more and more adults are looking for information online, we see them using a variety of channels to answer those questions. So where do you come in? Well, if we look at these 4 areas of why people are online, and this is in general, healthcare and specifically advocacy play a big role in each of these contexts. So the first one is connection. We all go online to connect with other people. One of the things that we see a lot of is patient groups, right? Or even things being talked about in other groups. For example, I have 2 young kids, so I'm in a ton of mom groups on Facebook. And why are people in all of these groups? To connect with other people, to get answers to some of their questions. And not every question is actually specifically about parenting. Actually, shockingly, a ton of healthcare questions come up there, right? My kid has this rash. Does anyone know what this could be? My kid fell. Do you think I need them to see a doctor? Why are we asking strangers on the internet these questions? Because we're connected with a community of people that we trust and respect. And so using social media as a way to foster connections amongst people is one of the biggest opportunities. What I find amazing participating in these mom groups is specifically with healthcare questions, when something comes up, chances are someone's experienced it before, right? And not all of the advice is good, but you get enough people with good experiences helping to give you some perspective so you can make a smarter decision. So connection is one of the key reasons people go online. For healthcare advocacy, there's a huge opportunity because people want to connect with other people specifically related to healthcare. If we look at the kinds of things people are posting about, what we see is they want to connect with other people. So they want to connect with someone who's had a similar experience and hear their story. They want to connect with others by sharing things that they support. If we think about things like, I support Rare Disease Day, which is coming up, why is this something that people are sharing online? Right? Why do I feel the need to post this on my Instagram account or on my Facebook page? It's because I want to connect with other people by showing them something I care about through advocating for it. So connection is one of the big reasons that people are spending time and energy online. The second is information. And social media and online marketing have had to cause us to rethink how we think about information. Specifically in healthcare, information used to be really complicated, right? So, I would go see my doctor about something and they would give me all these brochures filled with words that I would have to read. Or I mean, that sounds like normal, but actually what we know is people hate reading. They like to scan things and kind of get quick information and then dig in where they're interested. So it's not to say no one ever reads anything, but in digital, what we see specifically is people are going in and out for shorter time periods. So it's not to say you can't have long content, but it needs to be digestible for people who are maybe consuming it in short chunks over time. And so what we see when it comes to information in advocacy, specifically for healthcare, it's everything from videos. So especially now that more and more things are going virtual, we see a lot of videos creeping up that explain procedures, explain what to expect, tell family members what to expect. We also see these sort of simple images that help to convey information to others. So as people are going online looking for information, this is also a key role where you can play to connect them to the right information. And it can be information that you've created or information that you believe is helpful to them. But making that information digestible in a social context is really important in order for it to do well there. You can see other examples of this here, right? How to make medical appointments easier. And this was actually a carousel. So if you would scroll through, each image would give like 3 to 5 of these tips. And I think they had like 21 different tips to make medical appointments easier. So it's taking something that could be really long and complicated and making it easy for someone to digest on Instagram with just a little bit of information. We look at the next one, Lyme disease behind the numbers. What they did was they took information about Lyme disease and put it into a quick, shareable, simple looking graphic that makes that information easier and more interesting for people to consume. And so we know people go online for information, specifically with healthcare. Great opportunity to make sure that you're presenting them with information that's digestible and interesting enough that they'll want to pay attention to it. And I'm going to give you, I think I chose examples that hopefully are inherently inspiring and you can see what they're doing that makes them good. But I am also going to give you some pro tips to optimize your content after this section. The next thing is entertainment. So when I said, okay, entertainment can be key, some of you maybe said, well, we're not trying to be funny. This is serious stuff we're talking about. Of course it is. But entertainment, first of all, you can be entertained without laughing, right? You can watch a sad movie for entertainment. You can watch a action movie for entertainment. You can watch an inspirational movie for entertainment, or you can watch a comedy movie for entertainment, right? So entertainment doesn't have to be humor. When we think of the purpose of entertainment, it's somebody looking to kill time with something that's of interest to them. And so what you can see is in these examples is they're kind of just inspiring or amusing people sort of in a lighthearted way to continue to build that connection with them. So what you want to keep in mind also, and I know this is something that doesn't come naturally in healthcare, but you also don't always need to take everything so seriously. What's really interesting as sort of I think, relatable example is a number of years ago. So we do a 4-day boot camp. And we had someone come in who was working at like a psychology group, and they focused on depression. And so they're like clinical psychologists, right? Or psychiatrists, I don't know for sure. So anyways, everything they were posting was like real serious, heavy stuff. And, people go online for information. So there's a place for that. They're experts. It's clinical. I get it. But also, maybe people want to be inspired, right? What's amazing is if you go to Instagram and look at depression, you see things about reducing the stigma. You see things about inspiration. You see things about, tips. So when you think of entertainment, it doesn't have to be humor, which can maybe feel inappropriate even. It can be things that entertain somebody in a slightly different context, right? Because as you think about social media and your goals, what do you want to communicate and what are people open to? It's this mix, right? Information, community, entertainment, buying stuff. Probably not buying stuff so much, but entertainment for sure is still an opportunity, but it could be inspiration as a form of entertainment. It could be things that are kind of funny, right? So like chronic illness warriors as winter beverages, right? Kind of funny. And you can see how they kind of said, here's your drink and here's what it means about you. Maybe not funny, but like cute is maybe a nicer word. Here's an example, could actually be funny, right? The eye doctor results just came back. Me, can I see them? The doctor, probably not. Now, you obviously want to use humor tactfully, but entertainment plays a role whether humor is right for you or not. It's something worth considering. And Instagram and Pinterest are great ways to get inspired around this type of content. Because what you find if you look on social media, like if you look on Facebook at what other organizations are sharing, what you find is what other organizations want to push down people's throats. What you don't find is what people actually want to discuss around these areas. When you look at Instagram, where it's humans sharing stuff, when you look at Pinterest, where it's humans sharing stuff, or if you have other people in your network, that also gives you clues as to how you can match up what you want to say with the kind of stuff that people want to hear and are receptive to. So that's the type of content that people go online for, right? Now, the next step is to say, okay, how do I give it to them? The first thing you want to consider is what is your main goal? So start by mapping out what is your strategic objective in participating. Do you want to simply raise awareness and get in front of people? Do you have a more specific objective, influencing policy? Do you want to grow your reach? To build more awareness. Think about what it is you're trying to do. Then you'll want to think about, okay, what channel makes the most sense for you? And so you can see this is just the top part of this social media cheat sheet. If you want the whole cheat sheet, we have it on our blog. If you want this whole cheat sheet, it's like 4 times longer than this. You can send me an email. I'm Krista@bootcampdigital.com. My email's at the end, so you can wait until the end and write it down. But send me an email and I'll send you the link to where you can get this graphic. But it kind of shows you the best practices for each platform. What I would suggest as you're thinking about all of the different ways you can communicate with people, when we talk about digital and social, suddenly it feels like, man, I should do everything. And if we had more time, if we were doing a full-scale social media workshop, I could go into every single one of these, and maybe I'd even add TikTok in the mix, and I could tell you how you could use them. There is no shortage of things you could do. The key is figuring out what you should do. What is going to get you the most bang for your buck? And there's not a one size fits all answer. A lot of it depends on the resources you have available, the main things you're trying to achieve, and the audience that you want to reach. Typically, I think a lot of organizations lend themselves well to Facebook, Instagram, and maybe Twitter as the third place. You could argue LinkedIn as well if you're looking to reach, let's say, physicians or somebody more on a business context. So as you can see, there's opportunities in all of these networks. What you'll want to do is figure out which one really resonates with you the best and makes the most sense for you to be spending your time on. My suggestion always, choose one and nail it. If you look at just forget your industry, just like success in marketing broadly, because you are marketing, right? If you look at success in marketing or even within humans that are influencers, it's about nailing one thing, not half doing okay at a bunch of them, right? We have Instagram influencers. They're only on Instagram and they get paid $1 million to take pictures wearing a dress from a business. You have YouTube stars who do these unboxing videos of toys and stuff like that. The top YouTube influencer right now is a kid named Ryan who has a channel called Ryan's World, and he made $30 million last year. Do you think he's worried about his presence on Facebook and Twitter? No, he's just laser focused on nailing YouTube. We now have LinkedIn influencers who are killing it on LinkedIn. So my point here is there's a lot of things you could be doing. What you want to think about is what is most relevant for you. What do you have the resources to do well, and focus on really nailing one thing, and then you can continue to add and build on it. When I started with one channel. Now I have a presence on most of these. I'm not on Snapchat, but I have a presence on most of these over time, but it was built up sort of layering on and on as we went. So as you think about where you should start, look at what are the objectives you have for yourself. Who are the people that you want to reach? And as you match those up, you'll be able to see what is going to make the most sense. The other thing to consider is your actual resources. So I work with businesses a lot. And the thing that's helpful to keep in mind is that not every channel is as difficult for everyone. Here's what I mean by that. I did a presentation to a group of florists, right? And we're talking about Instagram. And one florist was like, oh my gosh, I'm killing it on Instagram because I have this girl who works for me. She's obsessed with Instagram anyways. So she just, she posts 3 or 5 things a day, and they're really great pictures and they do great. And we don't even really think about it. So for them, it's relatively easy to do. For another florist, she's like, I've never been on Instagram. My pictures all look terrible. I don't understand hashtags. For her, Instagram's going to be really hard. So even the same business, totally different return on investment models for the same channel based on how difficult it is for them to use and resource. So definitely that's something you want to take into consideration. This is a chart that we use at Bootcamp Digital. And we use it with all of our clients. And honestly, I think forget digital. As you look at marketing or your plans to do anything, mapping stuff out this way is going to be hugely impactful in helping you to focus your efforts. So whenever it comes to doing something, whether it's email, getting on Facebook, setting up a website, right? There's so many things you could do. Try and take all your ideas. And I do this, I'm looking at my wall, right? But I do this on my wall with sticky notes. And I say, okay, we could do all this stuff. How much time, money, or effort does it take? And how big is the impact? And then I can start to see, where should I focus my time? Because something that I could tell you, look, killing it on YouTube. People are searching. YouTube's the number 2 search engine. That's going to be where to spend your time. I could tell you that that's all true. But if you don't have good resources available to make videos, you could end up spending a lot of time not optimizing your video well and not getting any results. You could end up in that time drain quadrant with something that for somebody else is a big bet or an ROI center. So what you want to think about as you look at channels, and I know, we only have 45 minutes together today, so I'm touching the surface of a handful of topics, but I think this chart is something you can take away with you and really use to help you decide where you want to focus your time and energy, because all channels are not created equal and the investment for you is not always equal. So this will help you to kind of see where you want to spend your energy. Once you've decided where to go, the key is to get in the game, get started on something. A lot of the times it's difficult. They always say a 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step, right? It's some motivational quote like that. The idea here is you just got to kind of get the ball rolling. Don't worry right away if it's not perfect, if you're not following all the best practices. You can grow and improve over time. I do a workshop on personal branding, right? And when people see my personal brands, they're like, oh, but yours is so perfect. I don't know how to start. And I'm like, let me show you what my personal brand looked like when I started thinking about it. My blog domain was thisiswhyimhot.wordpress.com. Yes, this was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So it was funny from, that popular song. But, you know, everything is iterative. So even if you're looking at other organizations and you feel like, oh, they're nailing it, we don't have graphics, I don't have this, I don't have that, don't let that hold you back from starting, because everyone starts somewhere and gets better and better over time. I mentioned these florists to you. I've done webinars for this organization for like 10 years. And what's amazing is you just see this improvement over time of the ones who actually start doing it. So get in the game, start participating, do one thing well, and then grow from there. And what I want to give you now is some success tips that will work for you across your presence. So I kind of said at the beginning, I know everyone is in a different space within their social media journey. Some of you may be not doing much. Some of you are doing a couple things, not sure it's going well. And some of you maybe have your tires and gears moving well, and you feel like this is working. So here are some tips that will work for you regardless of where you are in your journey. The first is, of course, optimize your profile. Make sure that your profiles across social media can be found and that you're using a consistent username on every social network. If you don't have a presence on many networks yet, there's a service you can use called Namevine. It's just namevine.com. And you can type in a username and it will tell you where it's available. So if you are like, oh, I have a Facebook page, but I've not made accounts anywhere else, use Namevine and you can reserve your username even on sites you're not using yet. So that's always a pro tip I like to give out. But optimize your profile. Make sure it has the right information in it, your organization name is in there, and some of the keywords that someone would be searching for so they can find you. Especially if we think of things like Facebook groups, tons of people are looking for Facebook groups all the time. So being able to have the keywords someone's looking for in your Facebook group or in your page will help them to find and connect with you. So the first tip is make sure your profile is optimized. The second pro tip, authenticity wins. Try to be authentic. So I looked at just two different advocacy type organization Instagram profiles, right? And what's interesting is the first one that you see, very consistent branding. Obviously, they have someone who is doing a lot of their graphics. They're putting a fair amount of time and effort into it. And from a branding standpoint, I would say, yeah, this is a consistent brand execution. From a how is this going to do on Instagram standpoint, it doesn't feel like very authentic or interesting for the platform. One of the things we know on social is that people are there to connect, right? With other people or with organizations, but they want to have this feeling of authenticity. I wrote my second book on visual marketing. And one of the things we tell people about images that is still true today, so I think I wrote this book at least 10 years ago. And what's still true today is it's the 3 R's, real photos of real things taken by real people. That's what attracts attention in the newsfeed. And so as you're thinking about your messages and how you're conveying things, look for opportunities to build in authenticity so people start to feel like there's a real connection. When I look at my own business even, so we do digital marketing training, that's what we sell. And we run Facebook ads all the time and we test all different ads. And what always does best? The number one photo consistently, which personally I hate, it's a picture of me with like a backdrop like this, and I'm pointing at the camera smiling. I'm like, you. That always does best. No matter what the product is, no matter what the ad is, that always grabs attention. But it's a real person smiling, engaging, and that gets someone to pause in the newsfeed. And our branding is built right into the background, right? But that's what does well. The thing that does second best, real photos. So either someone holding a certificate and smiling, someone in the workshop. Now, if I were to take these to a branding agency, they would all say like, ooh, yeah, the lighting's off, this, that, the other. But that's also what people are looking for a little on social, right? They're looking for authentic connections. So look for opportunity to build in authenticity because people are there for connection. And while you do want consistent branding, you want to come across authentically because that's what people are looking for. So the more you can incorporate real people, real things, etc., the more likely you are to be successful. The second thing is you need great images. So I showed you a ton of great images at the beginning. And the reason I showed you so many pictures to make my points instead of text posts is, one, your brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. So if I'm trying to tell you, make your content authentic, showing you 2 pictures, you'll get that message faster than if I have word posts, right? So our brains process images faster than text, but images work better on every single social network. So whether we're thinking about Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, images are always vital. So think about how you can create simple, clear images to get your point across. One of the things that a lot of people forget is that, especially again, I appreciate healthcare as a serious topic, right? I'm not trying to make light of it with the example choices, but what we also need to consider is that people are on social media or wherever they are also scrolling quickly. They're looking for something that piques their interest and then they dive in and read more. So you don't always need all of the details in an image, for example. What you're trying to do is get them excited so they're clicking and learning more about your event, let's say, or the message you're trying to get across. So great images don't have a ton of text. They're clutter-free. They have a single clear focus that grabs your attention. And so that's what you want to think about as you're thinking about your image strategy. And again, as you think of your content balance overall, it's nice to have some things, if you think of this one, how can I support my friend with a chronic illness? That's a nice sort of lighter post. Although that's actually a bit of a heavy topic, right? But that's kind of a light, it's an emotional connective post that makes people feel positive and good about themselves ideally. But that's a nice balance to maybe some more serious content that you're sharing as well. So you can look at those things together. Another thing to consider is where can you also be inspirational? And, if you think about what do people want, right? Entertainment, they want to feel good about themselves. They want to connect with others. Inspirational content, they want to feel empowered. Think about what feelings people want to have. And then you can track that back to what kind of content can work for that. So I love this example. Advocating for myself does not make me a difficult patient, right? That says a lot just in one picture. And it's something that's probably broadly relatable to people even outside your target audience a little bit. So that has the opportunity for shareability, right? Because this is something that's really connecting with people emotionally. And maybe I want to share this as well so that other people can see that this is something I believe and care about. Also, make sure you're using hashtags to grow your visibility. Hashtags now work on every single social network. Arguably, they work the least on Facebook, but Facebook does allow hashtags. LinkedIn is promoting hashtags big time. On Instagram, they make or break your success. On Twitter, they also grow your visibility. So this screenshot I chose arguably is overkill, but look at the hashtags that people in your space are using and try to use the hashtags that other people are using. A good rule of thumb for hashtags is to have a third of them maybe broad, big ones. So like patient advocacy, patient advocate, those are anxiety, those are like big ones. And then you want a third of them to be a little bit more specific. So health advocate maybe would fall into that bucket. And then some of them can be really, really niche, right? Understand your health, for example. So you want to have a mix of hashtags. Obviously, you would use the most hashtags on Instagram, but I showed you that social media chart and it tells you how many hashtags. So if you want a copy of it, it's on our blog, but just send me an email. My email's on the last slide and I can send you the link for that as well. Also, look at the opportunity to tell stories. One of the reasons people are on social is for connections. So tell stories as a great way to connect with other people. And this is also really great for authenticity and capturing attention in the news feed. Because I showed you that example, one of them, a lot of stock photos, very professional looking, but it's stock photos and graphics. You don't connect to that the same way you connect to a picture like this girl smiling at you and wanting to hear her story and what she has to share with you. And then the next tip I have is get involved and participate. So sometimes we think of social media as a place to push out our messages. But the truth of the matter is that the more you build relationships and connect with humans, the better results you will get. And so there could be influencers within your space that you want to connect with. You could be an influencer and you want to build those connections, and your organization probably wants to build connections. So that's where you want to think about commenting, having discussions, sharing resources, but actually being social. I know, crazy concept, but actually be social on social media. And something I've seen, I've done social media since its inception. And even if I look at my personal brand, there's times when I just don't have a lot of time and I just post. And my content doesn't get as many likes. When I'm active, I'm liking other people's stuff, I'm engaging with them. My content does better as well because I'm building a community around me and we all care about and support each other. And so think about how you can get involved and participate, because it is an opportunity to be able to connect with other people. So the key tips that I shared with you to sort of grow your results: optimize your profile, use great images, be authentic, inspire, create and use hashtags, tell stories, and participate and get involved. So what can you do now? What I would suggest you do, hopefully you have a pen and a paper. And again, everyone is at a different spot in their journey, but maybe you've taken a bunch of notes. Step back and say, what is one thing that I can do immediately, or at least get started on, to take my stuff to the next level? Maybe you don't have a presence anywhere and you're like, okay, I need to first decide, and I'm going to make the decision this week, and then I'm going to get my profile set up next week, and I'm going to start posting the week after. Maybe you have a profile and you're thinking, ooh, yeah, our content can use a bit of a refresh. Great. I'm going to build a better plan for the mix of content, and then I'm going to create content, etc. So think about what you can do now and take the steps to build an actual plan, because that's where you'll get results. So we now have some time for Q&A. There's a couple questions that have come through that I'll answer first. If you have questions, please type them in. I'm happy to answer any questions, whether it's about something I specifically covered or something a little bit unrelated. That's a-okay for me. So ask any questions that are on your mind. If you want that chart, my email address is on here, so you can send me a quick email and I will send that chart to you. So the first question from Teresa is, what would I recommend in terms of animation versus photos for information and connection? So this is a really good question, because what we see is that images do well everywhere, but video is also a really big opportunity. And so I have a little visitor. Oh, thank you. Okay, you need to leave. I'm talking to people, honey. A broken cat. Sorry about that. So very important. So anyways, videos do best, especially on Facebook. And on Instagram, images still typically outperform, but on Facebook and LinkedIn, typically videos do better. So if you want to create some quick animated photos, one, you can do that. Facebook has something called Creator Studio, and it will put together these quick slideshows for you. My favorite tool to use for this is Animoto. And I do have a discount code. I don't get a kickback, by the way, but I do have a discount code that we negotiated for our clients that I can give you if you want to use Animoto. But Animoto, Ripple, Lumen 5 or 6 or something, all of them are pretty similar in terms of being able to take a bunch of images and turn them into really quick videos. These are great to use, especially if you have like a key message or if you're running ads. Videos will always outperform images when you're running ads. So taking a little bit of time to do that is also a great idea. So animated photos are great. If you use Canva, So Canva, it's C-A-N-V-A. Canva is probably the #1 photo creation tool for social media. It's full of beautiful templates. So if you were looking at some of the photos I showed you and were like, I wouldn't know how to create stuff like this, I get it. I actually would not consider myself to have good design talent. Canva is full of beautiful templates that you can just like swap out the image, swap out the words. Super easy to create really professional images. And Canva also has these quick animation photos where you can do a photo and just quickly animate the text on top. They're usually just like a couple seconds. So you can do that on Canva as well. So I would definitely recommend animation is a great way to connect with people and give them information. Plus, just that movement stands out in the news feed. So definitely consider that. Carson has asked about learning more about what is a great image and where you can find more information. Yeah, so this is something I have a lot of passion for. I've written 2 books on visual marketing, but they're a little outdated, so I'm not going to tell you to buy them. I wrote Visual Social Marketing for Dummies, and then just one for regular people, I guess. So they're both, I think, over 5 years old, so I wouldn't recommend that. But if you send me an email, I have a content optimization checklist I can share with you, and it talks about what makes a good image. But what I will say is, so there's some technical things like contrasting colors, clear central focus. Those are like the technical things to look for. But also, like, we all know a good image when we see it. When I wrote my books on visual social marketing, one of the things I would do in a keynote is I would go to a stock site and search for something, anything. And then it would show, let's say, 10 images. And I would ask the audience to vote on the best image. And 95% of people would always pick the same image. And the other 5% would always pick, the same one. My point is, we all know what an engaging and interesting image looks like when we see it. So I would also say, trust yourself a little bit to say, okay, is this likely to stand out for someone? And that will help you as well. Canva also has a huge stock library built in. So a lot of people used to always ask, where do I get free stock photos? There are free stock photo sites, but Canva, the subscriptions are cheap. I want to say 10 to 20 bucks a month. And they have a huge free stock photo library that you can use as well. So if you're creating a lot of images, it's definitely easy to use. Okay, Susie has a question about hashtags. Basically, the question is, does capitalization matter in hashtags? So if I did living with obesity with a capital L, W, and O or not, does it matter? Capitalization does not matter in the searchability of hashtags. So when someone is doing a search, it doesn't matter if you're using capitals or not. It's just based on the character limit. Okay, so the next question is, I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. I think it's Lucy is the last name, maybe. So the question is, healthcare can be a sensitive area for patients, advocacy groups, people with experiences or have had challenges, etc. How do you handle comments or feedback on posts on your page? Where the user may have taken offense or if they chose to share a challenging experience? Good question. So one of the things that helps when it comes to comments is, what I would say, first of all, is I see a lot of times we're really worried about the comments, but if you don't have a good active community, you won't get any comments. So try and get comments first and then worry about how to handle them second. Most of the time you're going to get productive comments. The way to handle challenging comments, I would say, is twofold. One, create terms for your page or community guidelines. So here's the kind of content that's okay. Here's the kind of content that's not okay. I participate in a user group for software. So it's like people who use this specific CRM software. And their community guidelines are like no bashing other people, this, that, or the other, and it includes them. So they launched something recently and people were commenting how stupid it was. And they said, well, our terms say, please be respectful, including how you want to talk about us. So it's okay if you want to give us feedback, but please try and be constructive about it. Just saying this is stupid there's no place for that in the community. So if you have community guidelines, that gives you a really easy way to direct people on how to become more constructive. I'm in a group as well, one of these mom groups, and one of their rules is no spouse bashing. So what they'll say is, look, you can share a challenge or a story and ask for help. You can't just go and complain about someone, because that's not really a positive element to the community. So set the guidelines for your page, group, etc., and then enforce them over time with what you feel is necessary, right? So sometimes it could be taking something down if it really is offensive. So, if two people started fighting, I might take both of their comments down and say, look, and send them private messages and say, look, this is not the place to get into an argument with somebody. Here's our community guidelines. If they're just kind of flirting on the edge, I might say, hey, this is really a little bit sounding more like complaining versus a productive discussion. Please see community guideline number 2. I'll let this slide, but try and be careful in the future, because then everyone else sees it as well. So basically what I would say is set guidelines up so that you can moderate your community well. If people are offended, generally by something that you have done, generally what's best is to sort of empathize, let them know you've heard them, and then decide what you want to do with it. Deleting comments usually is a bit of a last resort in terms of that stuff. So the next question is from Maura Murphy. That's the same name as my aunt. I don't know if that's actually my aunt from Canada on here. But if you're not, you have the same, literally the exact same name as her. But the question is, what's the difference between a hashtag and an @ in a tweet, and how do they work? So excellent question. So a hashtag is basically tagging your post as a part of a conversation. So let's say I'm talking about healthcare advocacy. Then I could do hashtag healthcare advocacy. So I'm tagging it with the hashtag to say this is broadly about healthcare advocacy. Let's say, on the other hand, that I wanted to tag a specific organization. Let's say I wanted to tag, let's say you wanted to tag me, right? Then @Kristinair is tagging a specific user account. So the @ symbol tags a specific user account. The hashtag is intended to tag the theme of the conversation. When it comes to hashtags, the primary reason to use them is to grow visibility amongst people who are looking for conversations around that hashtag. So for example, I work in digital marketing. I look on Instagram, I'll search hashtag digital marketing to see what people are sharing about it, to get ideas for my content, to see what's on people's minds, etc. So if you're posting by using these hashtags, it grows the visibility of your content. And that's basically the whole idea there. The next question is tips on creating a visual identity for a patient organization. Is it essential to have a visual identity online and with all communication? It's better to. Is it essential? I don't know. Is it something I would put at the top of my list? Probably. So basically what I would say is if you're looking to build a visual identity for yourself, the reason to do it is that you get this visual consistency across channels. So now when I quickly am scrolling on Instagram and I see your logo, I know it's connected to when I follow you on Facebook, or when you've made a post that my friend shares, I'm seeing that right away. So as you think about visual consistency, it's always a great idea. You do not need to slap your logo on everything, but building as much consistency as possible will just sort of solidify your brand over time. Think about the brands that do a great job with this, Tide laundry detergent or Ariel. I used to work on these brands at Procter & Gamble. They always are going to look and feel similar, so you have a clear idea in your mind of what they're about. Canva is a great tool to use if you want to do this. So, and Canva doesn't pay me or anything for the record, but it's the most common visual tool used by marketers, because essentially what this will allow you to do is to basically be able to easily create graphics. So you can even, there's logo templates in there that you can use. There's color palettes that you can start to look up. And then what you can do is easily use the same colors and themes across the board. So that's what we did, is we loaded like our color palette and things like this into our Canva account. So now any of us create images and they all look great. So I would suggest try to spend some time being consistent about it. Canva is a great tool to achieve this, just because it's so multi-purpose and you can easily create images for a lot of different channels. So that's why I would always recommend using Canva. Okay, the next question that we have is just wondering if you have advice for interaction propriety with professionals on social media. Yeah, so when it comes to interacting with, really anyone, whether they're a professional, a patient, an influencer, the key is to always be respectful. And so something to keep in mind is that doing nice things is always appreciated by anyone. By doing nice things, I mean liking their posts, leaving a helpful or kind comment, leaving a review for someone on LinkedIn, liking their content. Everybody pays attention and likes this stuff. I will tell you, like, I've done social media for ages. I have large followers everywhere, but there's some people who are regularly commenting on my stuff. I know who they are. Most of them I have never met, but in my head, I know them. And I feel like I know them really, really. So it can be a really good way to actually build a connection with somebody by spreading sort of positivity, sort of surrounding the people you maybe want to connect with. So let's say there was like a physician or a policymaker who, I wanted to sort of be on their radar. I'm probably not going to go after them and be like, hey, have you thought about our blah, 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 right? No, but what I'm going to do is I want to build a relationship, right? That's what it's really good for. So I'm going to start liking their stuff, leaving helpful comments, getting sort of in their mindset. And then maybe step 2 is, hey, I would love to meet to discuss this with you. Would you be open? And now they know who you are because they've seen you around. So I always think of it as sort of relationship building and a great opportunity there. So yes. Okay, let's see. What do we have next? What would you advise in international patient groups where the target groups speak different languages and we mostly communicate in English? So it depends a little what channels you're using, but I have great news for you. All social networks now have translation built in. And I know this because I am a non-Dutch speaker living in the Netherlands right now. So I don't speak the native language here. So one of the things, so there are, okay, 2 answers. One, if you're dedicated to communicating in multiple languages, you can do that. Facebook, for example, allows you to write a post in English and then write it in different languages. But for most people, it's unnecessary because Facebook knows your native language and will automatically translate content not in your native language for you. There's this little translate button you hit at the bottom and it translates. I know this because I use it so frequently. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about it if you're posting content on social media. I participate in a number of Dutch groups. As I said, I don't speak a word of, well, okay, I do speak a word of Dutch, but that's like basically it. But I can participate in groups just using Translate. I can see what people are posting and then I'll respond in English because most Dutch people actually speak English, but they also can just translate it back if they want to. Or I use Google Translate sometimes if I'm going to respond to a comment. So if you're posting on social media, the good news is you don't really need to worry about it. Most social networks have translation built in, so it's not something you need to worry too much about. Okay. And somebody, Katya, had said NGOs can get Canva for free. So now it's a no-brainer, go use Canva. It is seriously the best tool because it solves so many problems, from custom graphics, these little animated things, consistent brand identity, and even it has a huge stock library. So very cool. So now everyone can get Canva. Super good tool though. Okay, next question. I run a closed Facebook heart support group, so the content is protected. Therefore, as a patient advocate, is it more suitable to have a business page? And if so, should it be as a person or a condition in the title? Okay, so I'm going to give you my professional opinion, which probably some people would disagree with in my industry, but Facebook pages get very little organic or natural visibility on Facebook. And Facebook has done this on purpose because they want businesses to advertise. So, what's interesting is if you go out and look at even some of the biggest organizations you know that have 100,000 fans, they have 0 comments on any of their posts. And if you could see their reach, they're probably reaching very few people. This is because Facebook downgrades reach on organic content. So, because they want businesses to pay to advertise. So, if you create a business page, it's an uphill battle to get people to see your content. I'm not saying you can't do it. I could give you 100 examples of businesses that have great organic visibility, but it's hard and it takes time and effort. So if you know the channel well, you know your audience well, you have content they're really going to want and like and engage with, then a page can work well. Otherwise, unless you're going to advertise, your page will probably just be talking to an empty room. So if you are going to advertise, that's when it's worthwhile to create a page. So you sort of have this home base and then people can see your content. But otherwise, groups are really, really helpful. And a lot of people search for groups on Facebook. Plus, your existing members, you could look for ways to encourage them to maybe invite their friends or get others to join. So even though your group and your content is closed, you still could reach people through it if you're creative. If you're thinking, well, I can use the page to reach other people to then get them in the group, you can do that, but only if you're willing to advertise. If not, you could do it, but it would be a significant time and energy investment and a bit of an uphill battle to get visibility on that content. So hopefully that sort of answers your question a little bit. The next question, is there a good time of day to post for a wider audience? So people are on social media the entire time they're awake anymore. When I started, there was all this debate about the best time of day to post, and anymore, the answer is it doesn't much matter. As long as your content is on, your audience is online and receptive. So what I may want to think about is, when is my audience receptive to this message? So let's say I'm talking about a personal health condition. Maybe during the workday isn't the ideal time for someone to want to interact with that content. Maybe it's in the evening. So maybe I'm going to post that around 7, 8 o'clock. That's what I would think more about. So assume your audience, especially with these bad boys, our phones, right? We're online constantly. So what I would think a little bit about is people are online all day. When are they most receptive? And that's what I would focus on. You don't typically see these broad time of day boosts. If you look at it, everyone just says post at 2 p.m. And the reason they say that is because, like, in the US, that reaches the broadest time zones. So it's when the most people are online. But think about when they're most receptive to your message. And that's really what I would focus on there. Okay, so I think I have answered all of the questions. You guys all have great questions, so thank you for them. And Maura Murphy replied, she's not my aunt. Apparently it's a common name in Ireland. Well, my family is Irish, so there you go. I probably should have known that. I know you've all been wondering, so I thought I would close the loop there for you. So anyways, with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Neil to close out for the day. Thank you so much for all of the good questions. Feel free to send me an email if you want some of the resources I mentioned, and I'll make sure to get those to you. But thank you so much for having me and for your great questions and participation. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Krista, and thank you for such a high energy presentation. It was really fantastic, and we'll certainly claim you as Irish, no question about that. Can I say that it was really fantastic to have you. We really appreciate you giving this amount of time today. You're clearly a mine of useful information, and I can see from all the comments that everybody will have picked something up from today. I know we've talked about this earlier, and we're going to hopefully have you back again later on in the year. Particularly want to support those patient organizations that are starting out. and perhaps we might divide our attentions both to those in the early stages and those that are, let's say, further progressed, and how we can build greater capacity and capability. It would be remiss of me not to, in the spirit of your presentation, promote our channels at Global Heart Hub on Twitter and Facebook. So for anybody on today's session that is new to us, I would encourage them to follow us and hear more about our future advocacy training events. That's it for today in our promise of finishing on time. Krista, thank you so much. And to everybody listening, hopefully you've gained something useful that you can take back to your respective organizations, and hopefully you'll join us again for the next session and future sessions. Thank you. Goodbye.